The first week after the humans left, the galaxy laughed. It was not a small laugh. It was the kind of laugh that comes from deep inside the chest of someone who thinks they have won something. The Valkyrie ambassador made a speech calling the human withdrawal the tantrum of a child species. The Barathi delegation released a statement saying the council was stronger without emotional distractions. Even the smaller species, the ones who had quietly benefited from human generosity for decades, said nothing in their defense. It was easier to laugh than to worry. By the second week, the laughter got quieter. It started with small things. A medical station on the edge of the Tauran system sent a report to the council saying their supply of human-made antibiotics had run out. The station served 14 species across 3 planets. Without the medicine, infections that had been under control for years began to spread again. The station's director, a Tauran doctor with 4 arms and tired eyes, sent a message to the council asking for replacement supplies. The council forwarded the request to the Valkyrie Medical Corps. The Valkyrie said they would look into it. They did not look into it. On the trade routes, things got worse faster. The Marin Corridor, the one that humans had cleared of pirates 7 years ago, was the first to fall. Without human patrol ships, the pirates came back within days. They were not afraid of anyone else. The Valkyrie had bigger ships, but they were slow and expensive to move. The Barathi had fast ships, but they refused to patrol routes that did not directly benefit their own trade. The smaller species had no ships at all. Within a month, commerce through the Marin Corridor dropped by 80%. Goods that had moved freely between 40 systems now sat in warehouses or floated in cargo ships too afraid to fly. Prices for basic supplies went up everywhere. Food that used to be cheap became expensive. Medicine that used to be available became rare. Technology that used to be shared became hoarded. And on planet after planet, people began to ask the same question. Where are the humans? Minji heard about it all from Earth. She sat in her small apartment in a coastal city and read the reports on her screen. She had spent 15 years of her life building medical networks across the galaxy. She had trained alien doctors, designed hospitals that could serve species with completely different bodies, and created treatment programs that had saved billions. All of it given freely. All of it now falling apart. Her communicator buzzed with messages every day. Former colleagues, alien doctors she had trained, nurses from species she had never even met, all of them asking the same thing. Please, come back. We need you. Minji read every message. She did not reply to any of them. She cared so much that it hurt. But she had also been there, in those council sessions, standing behind Yuna, listening to the laughter. She had been there when a Valkyrie official told her, to her face, that human medicine was adequate but primitive. She had been there when the council voted to reduce human medical funding by half, even though human programs served more patients than all other species combined. She remembered the look on Yuna's face that day, the quiet fury, the decision being made behind those calm eyes. So Minji read the messages, and she did not reply, and she tried not to cry. On the frontier worlds, the situation turned from bad to dangerous. These were the planets at the edges of known space, far from the rich inner systems where the powerful species lived. The frontier worlds were home to dozens of smaller species, people who had never been strong enough or wealthy enough to build their own infrastructure. For decades, they had survived because humans helped them. Human engineers built their power grids, human doctors treated their sick, human ships protected their skies. Now all of that was gone. The first famine hit a small planet called Vareth 4. It was home to a gentle species of farmers who grew a special grain that could feed dozens of other worlds. But their irrigation systems had been designed and maintained by a human engineering team led by a man named Suho. When Suho and his team left, the systems kept running for a while. Then a pipe broke. and another. Then the main pump failed. The farmers did not know how to fix it. They had never needed to learn. Suho had always been there. The crops died within 2 months. 3 million farmers faced starvation. Varith IV sent a distress signal to the council. The council received it, logged it, and added it to a list of 200 other distress signals that had come in that month. There was a debate about which ones to respond to first. The debate lasted 3 weeks. By the time a decision was made, a first deaths on Varith IV had already been reported. The plague came next. It started on a mining colony in the outer reaches, a place where workers from 6 different species dug rare metals out of the ground. The colony's medical center had been a human operation. When the humans left, the center closed. A simple infection that Minji's team could have treated in an hour spread through the colony like fire through dry grass. It jumped from species to species, changing and growing stronger each time. Within weeks, the plague reached 3 neighboring systems. Millions were infected. Hospitals that still existed were overwhelmed. Doctors who had been trained by humans tried to remember what they had been taught, but they did not have the supplies or the equipment. They sent messages to Minji. They sent messages to Earth. They sent messages to anyone who would listen. No one came. The Galactic Council held an emergency session. The Great Hall, which had been so full of laughter just weeks ago, was now full of fear. Delegates shouted at each other. The Velkari blamed the Barathi for not sharing medical supplies. The Barathi blamed the Velkari for not patrolling the trade routes. The smaller species blamed everyone for ignoring them. And beneath all the shouting, beneath all the blame and the anger, there was a truth that no one wanted to say out loud. A truth that sat in the room like a stone too heavy to lift. The humans had been holding everything together, not because they were the strongest, not because they were the smartest, not because they had the best technology, but because they were the only species in the entire galaxy that had ever helped others, simply because it was the right thing to do. Every other species operated on exchange. You give something, you get something. Trade, deals, contracts, balance. That was how the galaxy worked. But humans were different. They gave without asking. They helped without conditions. They showed up when no one else would, fixed what was broken, healed what was sick, and then went home and asked for nothing except to be treated with basic respect. And the galaxy had not even given them that. Now the humans were gone, and the systems they had built, the networks they had created, the peace they had maintained, all of it was crumbling. Not because anyone had attacked it, but because no one else knew how to keep it running. No one else had ever bothered to learn. 3 months after the human withdrawal, the death toll across the galaxy reached 1 billion. 6 months later, it reached 5 billion. Trade had collapsed in half the known systems. 12 species were on the edge of extinction. Wars that humans had quietly prevented for decades erupted overnight. And on Earth, the humans watched. They watched, and they grieved, and they did not go back. The wars began the way all wars begin, with fear dressed up as pride. The Velkari were the first to strike. They had always been the largest species in the council, the ones with the most ships and the loudest voices. For decades they had looked down on everyone else, including humans. But the Velkari had a secret that they had kept hidden behind their arrogance. They could not feed themselves. Their homeworlds were beautiful but barren. For over a century, they had survived by importing food through trade routes that humans had kept safe and open. Now those routes were closed, and the Velkari were hungry. So they did what hungry empires have always done. They took what they needed by force. The Velkari fleet moved into the Sorhan system, a cluster of agricultural planets controlled by a small, peaceful species called the Nirath. The Nirath had no military. They had never needed one. They grew food. They traded fairly. and they had always been protected, first by the Council's rules, and then, in truth, by the presence of human patrol ships that made sure no one broke those rules. The human ships were gone now. The rules meant nothing. The Velkari took the Sorhan system in less than a day. They did not destroy the Narath cities. They were not stupid. They needed the farmers alive to grow the food. But they locked down the entire system, took control of all the food production, and declared that Velkari ships would shoot down any vessel that tried to enter or leave without permission. The Council condemned the invasion. The Velkari ignored the condemnation. What was the Council going to do? Send a strongly worded message? The only species that had ever been willing to actually fight for the Council's principles was sitting on a blue planet 50,000 light-years away, and they were not answering anyone's calls. The Borathi saw what the Velkari had done, and they decided to do the same. They had always wanted control of the Cathani mining systems, where the rarest metals in the galaxy were dug from the ground. Within a week, Borathi warships appeared above the Cathani worlds and demanded surrender. The Cathani, unlike the Nirath, tried to fight back. They were a tough species, strong and brave, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. The battle lasted 4 days. When it was over, the Cathani had lost 3 cities and 10,000 people. The Borathi controlled the mines. After that, the galaxy broke open like a cracked egg. Every species that had a fleet used it. Every old grudge, every buried anger, every quiet hatred that had been held in check by the presence of humans, all of it came pouring out. There were invasions, blockades, raids, and massacres. Systems that had been at peace for 100 years were suddenly at war. The Council tried to stop it. They called emergency sessions. They passed resolutions. They made speeches. None of it worked. The Council had always been a talking room, and now there was no one left who could turn the talk into action. The humans had been that bridge between words and deeds. Without them, the Council was just noise. In the middle of all this chaos, there was a young alien diplomat named Ren. Ren was a Tauron, one of the four-armed species from the outer colonies. He was young and idealistic, and he had grown up hearing stories about how humans had saved his people from the plague 19 years ago. His mother had been one of the patients that Dr. Minji had personally treated. She had survived because of human medicine. Ren had grown up believing that the galaxy could be good, that different species could help each other, that kindness was not weakness. Now he watched the galaxy burn, and he felt that belief dying inside him. Ren had tried everything. He had spoken before the Council. He had begged the Velkari to withdraw from the Sorhan system. He had asked the Borathi to release the Cathani mines. He had organized peace talks, written proposals, and worked day and night to find some solution. Nothing worked. Everyone was too afraid, too angry, or too hungry to listen. So Ren decided to do something that no one else had the courage to do. He decided to contact the humans. It was not easy. After the withdrawal, the humans had closed all their communication channels with the Council. Every frequency, every relay, every diplomatic line, all of it shut down. It was as if a wall had been built around Earth and every human colony, and the wall had no door. But Ren was clever, and he was desperate. He found an old emergency frequency that had been used decades ago, during the Drift Wars, to communicate with General Doha's forces. It was outdated and probably monitored by no one. But Ren sent a message anyway. He did not send it to the Council. He did not send it to the human government. He sent it directly to Doha. Doha was old now. He had retired years ago, after a lifetime of fighting battles that the galaxy never thanked him for. He lived in a quiet house on a mountain on Earth, surrounded by trees and silence. He spent his days reading, walking, and trying to forget the 800 soldiers he had lost in the Drift Wars. He did not watch the news. He did not want to know what was happening out there. But the message found him anyway. It came through on an old military receiver that Doha kept in his basement. He had not turned it on in years, but something made him go down there that night. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the feeling that the universe was calling, even through all that silence. He turned on the receiver, and Ren's voice filled the room. "My name is Ren. I am a Tauran diplomat. I know that you have no reason to listen to me. I know that my people, and every people in this galaxy, treated yours with disrespect. I know that we laughed when we should have listened. I know that we took when we should have thanked. I am not calling to make excuses. I am calling because there are children dying on worlds that your people once protected. I am calling because the plague is back, and there is no one who can stop it. I am calling because 3 species are about to be wiped from existence, and the Council is doing nothing." Ren's voice broke for a moment, then continued. "I am not asking you to come back. I am not asking you to forgive us. I am asking you, one person to another, to tell me what to do, because I do not know how to save them, and I think you might." The message ended. Doha stood in his basement and listened to the silence that followed. He played the message again, then again. Then he sat down in his old chair and put his face in his hands. He thought about the Velkari general who had called his troops human pets. He thought about the council vote that had labeled his entire campaign unauthorized interference. He thought about the anger and the hurt and the long, slow process of learning to live with being treated like nothing. And then he thought about children dying on worlds he had once protected. Doha picked up the receiver and pressed the reply button. "I am listening," he said. "Tell me everything." They talked for 3 hours. Ren told him about the wars, the famines, the plague, the collapsing systems. He told him about the Velkari invasion and the Borathi conquest. He told him about the millions of refugees and the billions at risk. Doha listened to all of it without interrupting. When Ren finished, the old general was quiet for a long time. "I cannot promise you anything," Doha finally said. "I am retired. I have no authority. The decision to leave was made by people much more important than me. And it was the right decision." "Then why are you listening?" Ren asked. Doha did not answer that question. Instead, he asked one of his own, "How many children?" Ren told him the number. It was very large. Doha closed his eyes. He thought about it for a long time. Then he opened his eyes and spoke. "I will make some calls. I am not promising anything, but I will make some calls." He ended the transmission and sat alone in his basement. The house was quiet. The mountain outside was dark. Somewhere very far away, the galaxy was falling apart. Doha reached for his communicator and dialed a number he had not dialed in years. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Yuna," he said, "we need to talk." While the galaxy burned, Earth was quiet. Not the quiet of fear or sadness. It was the quiet of a people who had finally stopped carrying a weight that was never theirs to carry. For the first time in 60 years, humans were building for themselves. The change had started slowly, in the weeks after the withdrawal. Ships that had been patrolling alien trade routes came home and were repaired. Doctors and nurses who had spent years on alien worlds returned to Earth's hospitals. Engineers who had built power grids for species that never thanked them turned their attention to human cities, human colonies, human problems. And something remarkable happened. Something that no one in the galaxy had expected, because no one in the galaxy had ever really understood what humans were capable of when they focused on themselves. They advanced, fast. Suho was at the center of it. The engineer who had spent years fixing irrigation systems on alien farm worlds now worked in a research facility on the coast of Korea. His team was small, just 30 people, but they were some of the brightest minds on Earth. For years, Suho had been frustrated. He had ideas, real ideas, the kind that could change everything. but he had never had the time or the resources to work on them. Every time he started something new, the council would send another request. Another broken system on another alien world. Another emergency that needed human hands. Now the requests had stopped, and Suho was free. Within 3 months, his team developed a new type of energy core. It was small, clean, and powerful enough to run an entire city for 100 years. Within 6 months, they improved it so much that it made every existing power system in the galaxy look like a campfire compared to the sun. Within a year, they had cracked the problem of faster-than-light travel that every species in the galaxy had been working on for centuries. The old method of space travel used jump gates, massive structures built at great cost that could send ships across the galaxy in hours. Every species depended on them. The gates were controlled by the Council, which meant the Council controlled all travel and trade. It was one of the reasons the powerful species stayed powerful. Suho's new drive did not need jump gates. A ship with his engine could travel anywhere in the galaxy on its own, at speeds that made the old gates look slow. It was a revolution. It was the kind of technology that changes the shape of civilization. And Suho built it on Earth, for humans, in silence. Hana worked in a different building, just a few kilometers from Suho's facility. She was a biologist, and her field was medicine. Like Minji, she had spent years studying alien diseases and developing treatments. But unlike Minji, Hana had always been more interested in the deeper questions. Not just how to cure a disease, but how to make a body that did not get sick in the first place. For years, she had kept a folder of ideas locked in her desk. Ideas that she had never had time to explore because there was always another alien plague to fight. Always another emergency medical mission to support. Now, for the first time, she opened that folder and got to work. Hana's breakthrough came in the 8th month. She developed a treatment that could repair human cells at the genetic level. It did not just cure diseases, it prevented them. It slowed aging, it made the human body stronger, more resistant, more adaptable. When she presented her findings to the Scientific Council on Earth, the room was silent for a full minute before anyone spoke. "How long?" someone finally asked. "How long can a human live with this treatment?" Hana looked at her data and gave an answer that would have shocked the entire galaxy if they had been listening. "We do not know yet," she said. "We have not found the limit." Earth was changing, not just in science and technology, but in spirit. For 60 years, humanity had poured its energy into the galaxy, into helping species that did not appreciate them, into maintaining systems that benefited everyone except humans. Now all that energy was flowing inward, and the results were extraordinary. New cities rose on Earth and on human colonies across the solar system. They were beautiful cities, designed with care and built with technology that the rest of the galaxy could not even imagine. Education systems were rebuilt. Art and music and literature flourished in ways they had not for decades. Children grew up in a world where they were told, for the first time, that their purpose was not to serve the galaxy. Their purpose was to be human, to explore, to create, to live. Yuna watched all of this from her office in the capital. She was no longer the ambassador. There was no one to be an ambassador to. But she had been asked to lead the Council of Earth, the governing body that managed humanity's new direction. It was a job she had not wanted, but had accepted, because she felt responsible. She had been the one to walk out. She needed to make sure the walk had been worth it. On her desk, there was a growing pile of messages. They came from across the galaxy, from every species, every government, every organization that had once ignored her. Some were angry, some were pleading, some were threatening. One particularly memorable message from the Velkari government demanded that humans return to their obligations immediately, or face consequences. Yuna read that one and almost smiled. The Velkari were threatening consequences while their own empire was falling apart. It would have been funny if millions were not dying. She did not reply to any of the messages, but she read them all, every single one, and she kept a separate file, a private one, where she saved the messages from the small species, the farmers, the miners, the frontier people, the ones who had never had a voice in the council. Their messages were different from the rest. They did not demand or threaten. They simply asked, in small and broken words, for help. Those messages kept Yuna awake at night. Doha called her regularly now. After his conversation with Ren, he had begun gathering information. He was too old and too careful to act without thinking, but he was also too human to ignore what was happening. He spent his days talking to old military contacts, to former volunteers, to anyone who had served in the galaxy and come home. The plague has reached the inner systems, Doha told Yuna one evening. Minji's old networks are completely gone. The Tauran are trying to rebuild them, but they do not have the knowledge. Ren says the death toll this month alone was 200 million. Yuna closed her eyes. I know. The Velkari and the Barathi are still fighting. 3 more species have declared war on each other in the last week. The refugee crisis is beyond anything the galaxy has ever seen. I know, Doha. Yuna, his voice was different now, softer. How long do we wait? She opened her eyes and looked out her window. The city below was bright and alive. Human children played in parks. Human scientists worked in labs. Human artists painted murals on the sides of buildings. This was what peace looked like. This was what they had earned. We wait until they understand, she said. Understand what? That we are not servants, that we are not tools, that when we come back, if we come back, and they will never ever take us for granted again. Doha was quiet for a moment. And if they never understand? Then we stay here, Yuna said, and we build something better, for us. Meanwhile, the distress signals kept coming. They flooded in from every corner of the galaxy, day and night, in hundreds of languages. Automated systems on Earth's communication satellites received them, logged them, and filed them away. No one responded. The signals piled up like snow in winter, layer after layer, each one a voice crying out into a silence that had once been filled with human kindness. The galaxy had taken that kindness for granted. Now it was learning in the hardest way possible what it meant to live without it. On Earth, Suho finished his latest prototype. Hana published her latest paper. Children went to school. Families ate dinner together. The sun set over oceans that were cleaner than they had been in centuries. And somewhere in the dark between the stars, the galaxy screamed, and no one answered. The call came on a Tuesday. It was not a demand, it was not a threat. It was not dressed in the proud language of empires or the cold words of diplomacy. It was a simple message, sent on an open channel so that every species in the galaxy could hear it. It came from Ren, and it said this: To the humans of Earth, we were wrong. Please come home. It was broadcast on every frequency, in every language, across every system. Ren had worked for months to make it happen. He had traveled to every government, every council, every war zone and refugee camp in the galaxy. He had begged, argued, and pleaded with leaders who did not want to admit they were wrong. Some had refused. The Velkari had thrown him out of their capital. The Barathi had ignored his calls for weeks. But Ren did not give up. He showed them the numbers, the death tolls, the collapsed systems, the dying children. He showed them what the galaxy looked like without humans. And slowly, painfully, one by one, they began to listen. The final agreement took 3 days of non-stop negotiation. 900 species had to sign a single document, the first document in galactic history that every member agreed to. It had only 5 points. First, humanity would be recognized as an equal and founding member of the Galactic Council, with full voting rights and permanent seat on the governing board. Second, all human contributions to the galaxy, past and present, would be officially recorded, acknowledged, and honored. Third, no species would be permitted to use human aid without offering fair and equal partnership in return. Fourth, the Council would create a new position, the Guardian Chair, which would always be held by a human representative, with the authority to act independently in emergencies without waiting for Council votes. Fifth, the galaxy would say thank you. That last point had been Ren's idea. Some of the delegates had laughed at it. Others had been confused. What does that mean? The Barathi ambassador had asked. It means exactly what it says, Ren had told him. You will stand in front of the humans, and you will say the words. Thank you. The message was sent. The galaxy waited. On Earth, Yuna read the message in her office. She read it 3 times. Then she called Doha. Did you see it? She asked. I saw it, Doha said. His voice was rough, the way it always got when he was trying not to show emotion. The kid actually did it. Ren? He got 900 species to agree. 900. I could not even get 3 to stop fighting. Yuna was quiet for a moment. Do you think they mean it? Doha thought about it. I think Ren means it. I think some of them mean it. The rest are desperate enough to pretend, which is close enough for now. Yuna stood up and walked to her window. Outside, the city was living its quiet, beautiful life. She had fought so hard to protect this. She had walked away from the galaxy to build this peace, this dignity, this home where humans could be humans without apology. Now the galaxy was asking her to come back. She called a meeting, not just the Council of Earth, but everyone. Suho, Hana, Minji, Doha, Teho, representatives from every human colony. The meeting lasted 12 hours. There were arguments, there were tears, there were people who never wanted to go back, and there were people who had been waiting for this moment since the day they left. In the end, Yuna made the decision. Not because she wanted to, because she was human, and humans could not watch people die when they had the power to save them. We go back, she said, but we go back as something new. The fleet that left Earth was not the fleet that had come home 2 years ago. It was bigger, faster, and more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Suho's new engines powered ships that moved through space like light through water. Hana's medical technology filled entire ships with cures and treatments that could save billions. Human soldiers, stronger and healthier than ever before, stood ready, not to fight, but to protect. And at the front of the fleet, in the lead ship, stood Yuna. Teho was beside her, as always. He looked older now, with lines around his eyes that had not been there 2 years ago. But he stood straight, and his hands were steady on his tablet. The Council has prepared the Great Hall, Teho said. Every species is represented, full attendance, first time in galactic history. They are scared, Yuna said. Yes. Good. Fear teaches respect faster than anything else. The fleet arrived at the Council planet in a formation that stretched across the sky. Thousands of ships, gleaming with technology that made the alien vessels around them look ancient. The people on the planet below looked up and saw the human fleet filling their sky from one edge to the other, and they understood something that words could never have taught them. Humans had not been weak. They had been kind, and there is a universe of difference between the two. Yuna walked into the Great Hall for the second time. The last time she had been here, she had dropped the seal of Earth on the podium and walked away. Now she walked in carrying nothing. She did not need a seal. She did not need a symbol. She was the symbol. The hall was completely silent. 900 species watched her walk to the platform. Not one of them made a sound. Not a click, not a whisper, not a breath. Yuna stood at the podium and looked up at them. 2 years ago, she said, I stood here and told you that we were done. I told you that we would no longer give our blood, our sweat, our kindness to a galaxy that treated us like servants. I meant every word. She paused. Today I am here because a young man named Ren had the courage to do something that none of your leaders could do. He admitted that he was wrong. He asked for help not with demands, but with honesty. He reminded me of something that I almost forgot during these 2 years of silence. Her voice softened, just slightly. He reminded me why we helped in the first place. Not for your gratitude, not for your respect. We helped because that is who we are. Humans do not help because they expect something in return. They help because they cannot watch suffering and do nothing. That is our greatest strength. And for 60 years, you used it against us. The silence in the hall was so deep, it felt like a physical thing, pressing against the walls. That ends today. Yuna reached into her pocket and pulled out a new seal. The old one had been a small, humble disc, the kind of thing you could easily overlook. The new seal was different. It was larger, brighter, and engraved with words in every human language. The words said, "We help because we choose to." She placed it on the podium. We accept your invitation to return. We accept the terms of the agreement. But let me be clear about something. Her eyes moved across the hall, meeting the gaze of every delegate she could see. We are not coming back as your helpers. We are not coming back as your servants. We are coming back as your equals. And if the day ever comes when this council forgets that again, we will not just leave. We will take everything we have built, and we will go so far beyond this galaxy that you will never find us again. She let those words settle. But I do not think that day will come, because I believe in something that most of you have never understood. I believe that people can change. Species can change. Galaxies can change. Not because they are forced to, but because they choose to. Yuna looked directly at the section where the Valkyrie delegation sat. Their ambassador, the same one who had laughed at her 2 years ago, sat very still. His silver skin was pale. He did not look away. So let us begin again, Yuna said, not as masters and servants, not as strong and weak, but as neighbors, as partners, as a galaxy that finally learned what it almost lost. She stepped back from the podium. For a moment, nothing happened. The silence held. Then Ren stood up in his seat. He was just a young Tauron diplomat, nobody important, nobody powerful. But he stood up, and he began to clap. It was an awkward sound. His 4 hands did not make the same noise as human hands, but he clapped anyway, because he had learned the gesture from the humans, and he knew what it meant. One by one, other delegates stood. The farmers from the Niroth worlds, the miners from the Cathani systems, the frontier people who had suffered the most. They stood and they clapped, each in their own way, with whatever hands or limbs or appendages they had. Then the larger species stood, slowly, reluctantly, but they stood. Even the Borathi, even at last the Valkyrie. 900 species stood in the great hall and applauded a single human woman. And for the first time in the history of the Galactic Council, the sound that filled that enormous room was not laughter or shouting or argument. It was gratitude. Yuna stood on the platform and let the sound wash over her. Tejo stood behind the curtain, wiping his eyes. Somewhere on Earth, Doha sat in his house on the mountain and listened to the broadcast. And the old soldier smiled. Minji opened her communicator and began replying to messages for the first time in 2 years. Hana packed her medical kits. The humans were coming back. And this time, the galaxy would remember. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest room ever built by any living species. Its ceiling stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed inside it. Thousands of seats rose in circles around a single platform in the center, and every seat was filled. Representatives from over 900 species sat watching, whispering, and waiting. Today was supposed to be a normal session. It was not going to be normal at all. Una stood behind the curtain at the edge of the platform. She wore a simple dark suit. No jewelry, no medals. She had removed them all that morning. Her aide, Tejo, stood beside her, holding a tablet and looking worried. "The whole galaxy is watching this live," Tejo said quietly. "Over 40 billion viewers." "Good," Una said. Her voice was calm, but her hands were tight at her sides. "They should watch." Tejo looked at her for a long moment. He had worked with Una for 12 years. He had seen her argue, negotiate, smile through insults, and fight for deals that no one else could win. But he had never seen her like this. There was something final in her eyes. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. Una did not answer. She simply walked forward, through the curtain, and onto the platform. The hall went quiet. Not slowly, but all at once, like a door slamming shut on sound. 900 species turned their eyes, their sensors, and their attention to the small human woman standing alone in the center of the biggest room in the universe. Una looked up at them. She had stood on this platform many times before. She had begged for fair trade agreements. She had presented human medical technology as a gift to dying worlds. She had asked for nothing more than respect. And every single time, they had laughed at her. Not always out loud. Sometimes it was worse than laughter. Sometimes it was silence. The kind of silence that said, "You do not matter." She pressed a button on the podium, and the translator systems activated across the hall. "My name is Una," she began. "I am the ambassador of Earth and all human territories. I have held this position for 12 years. In that time, I have spoken before this council 114 times. She paused and looked around the room. 114 times I brought something to this council. Trade proposals, medical aid, engineering support, military volunteers, food programs, emergency rescue teams. 114 times I gave, and 114 times I asked for one thing in return. Her voice did not shake. It did not rise. It stayed flat and steady, like a blade being drawn slowly from its cover. Respect. The word hung in the air. I did not get it, not once. A few of the alien delegates shifted in their seats. The Velkari ambassador, a tall creature with silver skin, let out a low clicking sound that meant amusement. Others nearby made similar noises. They had heard human complaints before. It was always the same thing. The small species from the small planet in the small corner of the galaxy, always asking to be treated like they mattered. Una heard the clicking. She had heard it many times, but today, for the first time, she smiled at it. 19 years ago, she continued, the Tauron plague spread across the outer colonies. 30 billion lives were at risk. This council debated for 6 months about who should help. Humans did not debate. Dr. Minji and her team flew to every infected world. They treated patients. They built hospitals. They created the cure. They saved 22 billion lives. She let that number sit in the air. This council never said thank you. The clicking from the Velkari ambassadors stopped. 14 years ago, the Drift Wars nearly destroyed the entire Borath system. 3 species were about to go extinct. This council held votes. Humans sent General Doha and 6,000 volunteers. They fought for 2 years. They lost 800 soldiers. They saved 3 species. Una's eyes moved across the hall. This council called it interference. Now the hall was truly silent, not the polite silence of boredom, the heavy silence of something breaking. 7 years ago, the trade route through the Marin corridor collapsed. Pirates took control. Commerce across 40 systems stopped. This council formed a committee. Humans sent engineer Suho and a fleet of 40 ships. They cleared the corridor in 3 weeks. They asked for nothing. She took a breath. This council gave the credit to the Velkari Navy, who arrived 2 months later. The Velkari ambassador's silver skin changed color slightly. The creatures around him leaned away, just a little. I could keep going, Yuna said. I have a list. It is very long. But I will not keep going, because none of it matters anymore. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small metal disc. It was the Seal of Earth, the official symbol of humanity's membership in the Galactic Council. It was old. It had been carried by every human ambassador since the day Earth first joined the Council, 60 years ago. Yuna held it up so everyone could see it. 60 years, she said. For 60 years we sat in this hall and gave everything we had. We asked only to be treated as equals. We were not. We were treated as servants. As something small and useful that could be ignored when it was not needed. She placed the seal on the podium. We are done. A wave of murmuring swept through the hall. Some delegates leaned forward. Others looked confused. A few began to laugh again, thinking it was a dramatic gesture, a negotiation trick. Yuna did not wait for them to understand. Effective immediately, the human race withdraws from the Galactic Council. All human personnel will be pulled from every joint operation within 30 standard days. All human medical programs, trade agreements, patrol routes, and engineering projects operated under Council partnership are cancelled. The murmuring turned into noise, real noise, hundreds of voices overlapping. You cannot do this, someone shouted from the upper rows. We just did, Yuna said. She turned away from the podium and walked toward the curtain. Teho was waiting there, his face pale, but his back straight. He held up the tablet. I sent the withdrawal order to every human outpost the moment you put the seal down, he said. It is done. Yuna nodded. Then let's go home. They walked together through the long corridor that led out of the council building. Their footsteps echoed off the polished floor. Behind them, the noise in the great hall grew louder and louder. Arguments, shouting, accusations. But Yuna did not look back. Outside, the sky above the council planet was filled with ships from 100 different species. Yuna looked up at them for a moment, then looked away. She climbed into the human shuttle. Teho climbed in after her. The door closed. As the shuttle lifted off, Teho looked down at the council building growing smaller beneath them. They are going to regret this, he said. They are going to learn what it means to lose the only species that ever helped them without asking for something in return. The shuttle broke through the atmosphere and entered open space. Behind them, the Galactic Council was already falling apart. They just did not know it yet. On every human outpost, on every station, on every ship and colony and research base across the galaxy, the same message appeared on every screen. Come home. And every single human obeyed.